Snow fell hard that winter, thick as wool and quiet as prayer. The town of Silver Creek huddled under it, tiny cabins half buried, smoke curling from chimneys like ghosts reaching for the grey sky. Lydia Hart watched the storm from the window of the old mission house, her shawl pulled tight around thin shoulders. The world outside looked endless and cruel, but inside wasn't much warmer. She was 25, and she hadn't walked in nearly 2 years. The accident that took her legs had also taken her life as she'd known it, her work, her independence, her fiancé. After the wagon overturned in the pass, leaving her spine shattered, he'd visited once, murmured something about God's will, and never came again. Since then, Lydia had lived on the kindness of others, kindness that wore thin as the seasons changed. That morning, she'd overheard the mission matron whisper to another woman, thinking Lydia couldn't hear. "She's kind enough, but we can't keep feeding mouths that don't earn. She can't sew, can't wash, can't even sweep. It's a pity, truly, but pity don't heat the stove." Lydia turned her face to the window then, so they wouldn't see the tears. The storm thickened by noon, and when the door burst open, wind howled through the hall. A man stepped inside, brushing snow from his shoulders. He filled the doorway, tall, broad, wrapped in a coat of dark fur. "Name's Elias Boone," he said, his voice low and rough as gravel. "Brought pelts to trade." The matron hurried over, flustered. "Oh yes, Mr. Boone. You can leave them by the hearth. Warm yourself, if you please." He nodded once and set the heavy bundle down. Lydia watched him quietly. He was no stranger to hardship. She could see it in the way he moved. Like a man who had spent years fighting the wilderness and never lost, but never quite won. When the matron left to fetch her scales, Elias turned toward the corner where Lydia sat. Their eyes met. She looked away quickly, embarrassed by her chair, by her useless hands resting in her lap. But his voice came steady. "You been out in this storm?" She shook her head. "No, I don't walk much anymore." He studied her for a moment. "Then you must hate the winters here." "I used to," she said. "Now I just get used to watching them." He gave a small, thoughtful nod. The matron returned then, chattering about prices, and the conversation ended. But when Elias left, he paused by Lydia's chair. "You take care now, ma'am," he said quietly and tipped his hat. She smiled faintly. "You too, Mr. Boone." That night, when the wind rattled the roof, Lydia found herself thinking about his eyes, steady and kind, the kind that saw more than most men let themselves see. Days passed. The storm eased, but whispers grew in town that the mission couldn't keep all its boarders through the spring. Lydia knew what that meant. She'd have to go. The morning they told her, she didn't argue. She just nodded, packed her small bag with trembling hands, and wrapped herself in her old wool shawl. "I'm sorry," the matron said softly. "We wish things were different." Lydia smiled, though her throat ached. "So do I." By afternoon, she was sitting on the edge of town in her chair, watching the trail vanish into the pines. The wind carried the smell of pine and cold earth. She didn't know where to go. That's when she heard the crunch of boots behind her. "You planning to freeze out here?" She turned. Elias Boone stood there again, his beard rimed with frost, his eyes narrowed with concern. "They said you were leaving," he said. "Didn't say where." "I don't know where," she admitted, trying to sound brave. He looked at the empty road, then back at her. "No family?" "None who'd have me." He was silent a long moment. Then quietly he said, "You ever been up in the mountains?" She almost laughed. "In a chair like this?" He didn't smile. "I can build you something better than that. You'd be surprised what you can do with the right wood and time." She blinked. "Why would you do that for me?" He shrugged. "Because nobody else will." She stared at him, unsure whether to trust him or to cry. "I can't walk, Mr. Boone." "I know." His tone was calm, not pitying. "But you can still live. You just need a place to start." He adjusted the strap of his pack. "I got a cabin up near Eagle Ridge, quiet, warm. You come with me, I'll see you're safe till spring. After that, you can decide what you want." Lydia hesitated. Everything in her life had been loss and leaving, but something in his voice, steady as mountain stone, made her believe him. "All right," she whispered, "but only till spring." He nodded once. "Till spring." Then, with a kind of patience that broke her heart, he lifted her, carefully, gently, as though she weighed no more than snow. She felt his strength, the warmth of him, the way he moved, like the world couldn't take anything from him, that he didn't let it. When he set her in the wagon, he covered her with a blanket and said, "You'll see the mountains soon. They've got a way of fixing what the world breaks." As they rolled out of Silver Creek, the town watched from windows, whispers following them like wind. Some said the mountain man had gone soft. Others said he'd lost his mind. But Lydia just stared at the horizon, where the pines rose tall against the dying light. For the first time in 2 years, the road ahead didn't look like an ending. It looked like the beginning of something unseen, something she couldn't yet name, but could feel in her chest like a heartbeat returning after a long, long sleep. The road to the mountains was slow and rough, but Elias never once complained. Every bump, every patch of ice, he handled like a man guiding something sacred. When they finally reached his cabin, Lydia gasped. It sat on a rise above a frozen lake, smoke curling from the chimney, pine trees thick around it like sentries. The logs were old, weather-dark. The door hung with a pair of snowshoes and a lantern. It wasn't grand, but it felt solid, like it had stood through everything and would keep standing still. Elias carried her inside, set her near the fire, and knelt to stir the flames until they leapt high and golden. "You'll be warm here," he said simply. The next days passed like something out of another life. Elias worked from dawn till dusk, hauling water, chopping wood, and vanishing into the woods with his axe and saw. Lydia watched from the window, wondering what he was building. When he returned each night covered in sawdust and snow, he'd smile that quiet smile of his and ask, "You eaten?" He never pitied her. He never asked about what she couldn't do. He only spoke of what came next, what could be made, repaired, built. By the 3rd week, Lydia began to feel her strength return. She helped where she could, peeling potatoes, mending torn shirts, reading aloud from an old Bible she'd found on his shelf. And one evening, when the light turned amber across the snow, Elias came in carrying something large over his shoulder. "Got something for you," he said. He set it down and pulled off the canvas top. Lydia's breath caught. It was a chair, but not like any she'd ever seen, built of mountain ash and iron. With wide wheels and sturdy handles, it looked strong enough to climb the world itself. "I told you I'd build better," he said. "You can move yourself over the ground now. I fixed the wheels with hooks so you can grip the dirt and the snow." Lydia touched the smooth wood, her throat thick. "Elias, how did you—" He shrugged. "Used to build wagons. Just needed to think smaller." She laughed through her tears. "Smaller," he says. "You've built me freedom." He met her gaze for a long moment, then said softly, "That's the idea." That night she wheeled herself out onto the porch. The moon shone silver over the lake, and for the first time in 2 years, she felt the air on her face, not as a reminder of what she'd lost, but of what she still had. Elias stood beside her, silent, his breath fogging in the cold. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You already have," he said. "You kept fighting." She turned toward him, her eyes bright in the moonlight. "Most folks don't call this fighting." "Then most folks don't know what strength looks like." He smiled, but it faded quickly. "When I brought you here, the town thought I'd lost my senses. But they'll see." "See what?" "That a person isn't measured by what they can walk away from, but by what they can still build." The next morning, Lydia tried the new chair on the snow path. She moved slowly at first, then faster, the wheels biting into the ground. Her laughter echoed through the pines.